Baissac, the MD of Eunomix, joins us now for a look at South Africa's mining landscape. Lovely to have you, Claude, as always. Just picking up on those comments coming from looking at Merafe in particular. When we see these kind of numbers, I mean, we're saying, Wayne just pointed out, a revenue of 35%, that's a phenomenal number. Let's look at the demand and the sustainability of demand from the stainless steel industry for ferrochrome. Do you see this as a trend that's likely to stick around?
Yeah, I think it's, and I'm not a market, and I'm not, and I said that very clearly. I'm not a specialist on those particular issues. I look at the broad economic environment, the policy environment. But I think what I'll take out of that is that, despite the very gloomy atmosphere in the mining industry in South Africa, which has come out of an absolutely horrid year for most of the operators, it is possible with the right operating model in the right commodity to do something positive in South Africa, grow a business, grow the resource base, improve productivity, and deliver shareholder value. In the ferrochrome, that's clearly the case because there is demand, because there is still booming requirements out of China, mostly. But we're not going to see the kind of results we saw, as you said earlier, Wayne, in the golden years, no pun intended, of the 2000s. And the pressure from the shareholders to deliver those kind of results is very high up, is very high on. And the question is, can the rest of the industry, can all the sectors in the mining industry in South Africa deliver those kind of performances? And then the answer is a lot less bullish, I'd say.
Claude, you said something very interesting, Lindsay in Cape Town, by the way. You said it is possible for certain companies to do well. We saw that with Goldfields and Sibanye. The company split in half. One did one thing, the other one did another. When I look at Merafe, I say to myself, look, this is a small company, so therefore it's nimble. It may not have the labour problems that the big companies have. So maybe we should have a really good look at the small and medium cap miners in South Africa, because they are, as I said, more nimble and adaptable to change.
They are, and I think you raised the point of the labor issues. I think a lot of the mining companies in South Africa suffer from those legacy issues. The fact that during the boom time, they perhaps over bullishly invested in production methods and resources which were convenient and accessible at the time, and they didn't really look beyond the boom time, and they didn't really think about what would happen to them if the commodity prices, which were unsustainably high, would go down as they have done. And I think they are finding themselves, a lot of the big players, with those kind of legacy issues. But interestingly enough, you have companies like Sibanye Gold who are capable of taking old assets, and assets who, on the face of it, seem to have reach not the end of their economic life, but the end of their sunshine days, and turn them into something very productive. And it raises a lot of questions about what's going to happen, for instance, in the platinum sector, which is under a tremendous amount of stress. What, therefore, will it require to make South Africa's underlying asset, the mineral resources, productive economically? What does it mean in terms of restructuring those mining companies and finding the gold nuggets, finding the solution to get something out of that in not just a very difficult labor environment, but also a very difficult and constraining policy environment?
I mean, Claude, just to go a bit further on exactly what you're mentioning there, do you think there is a new way for government, labor, capital, mining companies to come with a new answer? Because, I mean, the old answer doesn't seem to be working. And then secondly, what can government do to improve the situation? And yes, specifically on legislation and policy framework.
Oh boy, there's a lot that government can and should do. And we know what that is. I think government has played a role which has not been entirely positive. There is continuing policy uncertainty. If we take the MPRDA, for instance, there were a lot of very hard negotiations about it, both on the oil and gas and on the mining side. There's been some sort of a deal between the Chamber of Mine, but it seems that that deal is actually not what is required to make investment happen. So you asked a question about what it takes. I mean, the current model is broken, and there's no doubt about it. And some mining companies will find creative ways, but if you look at the overall value and the contribution in the economy and the confidence that the investment community has globally and nationally in the industry, it's not there. So something new has to happen, and I think right now, no one seemed to have the capacity to break the logjam.
Very quickly, I mean, tomorrow the mining Lekgotla kicks off, and I just wonder, with events of this nature, it happens annually. It's a money-making, you know, platform for the conference organizers. Do investors still look to the mining Lekgotla to get a sense of the policy direction? Does it really matter what they're going to be discussing over the next 2 days?
Yeah, I'm not very optimistic about the mining Lekgotla. I think its promise was great, that it would be a place where the unions, the mining companies, the investors and the government would have frank and honest conversation. I don't think it's happening. I think it's a bit of a horse and pony show where everybody comes and say what they have to say. But is anything really coming out of it? Do we really have some sort of an agreement as to what the problem is in the mining industry? We don't. I mean, that's the bottom line, is that government says the fault in what's happening is the mining industry, which hasn't transformed.
Yeah.
You know, everybody is really looking at each other and saying it's your fault. And we're trying to come up with some sort of new regulatory dispensation, which nobody actually believes in fundamentally.
Well, Claude, thank you so much for making the time to join us. That's Claude Baissac. He's an economist from Eunomix.